Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about the poem The Sunshine Cat, written by Kamla. In this video session, we'll first discuss some of the stylistic aspects of the poetess, the writer of the poem. Then we'll discuss central idea and the theme of the poem, followed by the discussion of some critical aspects related to the poem. And in the later part of the video, we'll discuss the text of the poem. Let us talk about the poetess. Kamla is one of the prominent and one of the very important modern Indian poetesses. She is known for her open depiction of female sexuality in her poetry in most of her works. Much of the poetry of Kamla has love and marriage as its central theme. And the poem before us, The Sunshine Cat, belongs to the same category of her poetry. The Sunshine Cat is a confessional poem in the sense that it reveals to us some of the private and confidential feelings of the poetess. Here in the poem we find the poetess giving expression to her feelings of disillusionment, disenchantment and disappointment so far as her experiences of sexual act with her husband and with other men is concerned. The poetess, or better we say the persona in the poem, describes her sexual experiences with her husband and with various other men, and also expresses her feelings of complete disillusionment followed by all these sexual relationship with her sexual partners. The poem The Sunshine Cat by Kamla is also about the cynical nature of men, which makes these men see the woman as merely an object of lust. According to the poetess, men do not have any emotional attachment with the woman they fall in relationship with. Rather, men use the woman for satisfying their sexual lust. Kamla in all her poetry has dealt with the sexual act most candidly, and in the present poem also, she fully illustrates her candid treatment of this subject of sex relationship. Such subjects has always been taboo in Indo-Anglian poetry, but she has dealt with such subjects very openly, very candidly, very frankly. It is a personal poem, but has universal implications. The poem highlights the predicament of a helpless and frustrated woman in a male-dominated society. In the poem, the poetess is trying to expose how her husband as well as her so-called lovers used her for satisfying their lust, while she herself craved for emotional support, for love and for care. These men remained cold to it. They did not respond to her love in that way, means that at least the way she expected, and always remained cynical until she became a cold and finally a half-dead woman and of no use at all to men. In order to make the poem easier to understand, the poem may be studied in 4 parts. In the first part, the poetess tells about the cold nature of her husband. In the second part of the poem, The poetess talks about the lustful nature of those men with whom she was having extramarital affairs. In the third part of the poem, the poetess throws light on her sorrows and her personal griefs. In the concluding fourth part of the poem, the poetess describes how she became a half dead woman and finally useless to man. In order to understand the poem line by line, let us study the text of the poem. The Sunshine Cat by Kamla. The poem The Sunshine Cat is taken from Kamala's collection of poetry entitled Summer in Calcutta, which was published in the year 1965. The poem is about the difference between lust and love in a very convincing manner. Let us read the text of the poem. They did this to her, the men who know her, the man she loved, who loved her not enough, being selfish and a coward, the husband who neither loved nor used her, but was a ruthless watcher. In the opening passage of the poem, the poetess highlights the disastrous consequences of the life of lust, which often ends in destruction and death. It shows that only real love can give a personal, emotional, and spiritual satisfaction. The poem begins with the words, they did this to her. It indicates, the very first line of the poem indicates that it is about a female, a victim who has become the target of men. So the very first line of the poem indicates that the poem is about a female, a woman who is the victim of men. The poem realistically deals with the pathos of a lonely woman who failed to get real love in her life. She confesses that she was sexually ill treated and exploited by those men whom she loved, and the men were known to her. But these men indulged only in lust and denied this woman the emotional and spiritual thrills of love, which are the core of love. This woman failed to achieve that. Out of all the men, the woman, the persona in the poem, particularly refers to one person, one man among all these men, whom she really loved, but in exchange of her love, she received nothing. Unfortunately, this man, that is her lustful husband, overlooked her emotional needs and limited himself to the gratification of his lust only. Ironically, he was not only selfish but also a cowardly person. He never bothered to have any emotional rapport with his wife. This man, the husband, neither loved her nor used her, but always remained a ruthless watcher, only who kept a close watch over the relationship of his wife with other men. The passage shows the difference between lust and love in life. For Kamala Das, lust is limited to the gratification of sensual desires only. The relationship of lust is only one sided relationship in which the emotional needs of the other partner in sexual relationship are sadly overlooked. This kind of relationship is a momentary relationship in which no lasting unification is possible. Love, on the other hand, is a timeless spiritual relationship. In this way, the impression we reader receive is that this poem, The Sunshine Cat by Kamala Das, is a confessional poem in which the poetess highlights the tragic consequences of forced, arranged, loveless marriages. The poem is, especially these lines, are full of pathos in which the poetess suffering seem to have no ending. Let us read further. And the band of cynics she turned to, clinging to their chests, where new hairs sprouted like great winged moths, burrowing her face into their smells and their young lusts to forget, oh, to forget. And they said, each of them, I do not love, I cannot love. It is not in my nature to love, but I can be kind to you. The female persona in this poem suffered both physically as well as mentally at the hands of her husband, who neither loved nor used her. This woman, the wife, loved her husband, but her love was not reciprocated. She was, on the other hand, was suspected of having affairs with other men by her selfish and cowardly husband. As a result, the wife approached other men for genuine love, but all these men she turned for real love finally became cynics. All these men were in no way different from her selfish and lustful husband. The men she chose for getting genuine love were cynical, having no trust in the basic goodness of human nature. In the lines, clinging to their chests where new hairs sprouted like great winged moths, burrowing her face into their smells and their young lusts. In these lines, the poetess confesses the tragic result of lustful relationship, that what the woman feels when she falls into sexual contact with other men in search of love, but instead of love, what she receives in a lifelong suffering. She says that she clung to the chests of other men, the chest overgrown with new hair, like great winged moths, and she buried her face into the smells of these men's in their skins. In order to get genuine love, she submitted herself completely to their young greed, but today she wants to forget them all because she did that only to get real love, but she received only lust from these men. All these men she turned for love finally proved to be selfish and cruel, very similar like her husband, for these men could offer nothing but lust. The poetess frankly admits that it was not in her nature to love anybody. In these lines, the poetess expresses her irritation, which is the consequence of her extramarital relationship with other men. She has now become totally fed up with her marital as well as extramarital relationships in her life. She is shocked to learn that all her lovers had neither love nor lust, but only lip sympathy for her. They said that they could be kind to her, but they cannot love her. They let her slide from pegs of sanity into a bed made soft with tears, and she lay there weeping. For sleep had lost its use. I shall build walls with tears, she said, walls to shut me in. The female persona in the poem is totally disillusioned by her husband and by her other lovers. None of them, none of the men bothered to satisfy the emotional come spiritual needs of the woman. After being released from the clutches of such men, she left for some room in the house to relax herself on her soft bed and thinking about such wasteful relationship, she started shedding too many tears due to the cynical and hostile attitude of her lustful lovers. She even feared that she would go mad in this tensed state of mind. She thought that she had built walls of tears around her and enclosed herself within the boundaries of the walls of tears. Being self lost and dejected, the persona had consciously alienated herself, separated herself from the rest of the world, the rest of the mainstream of life. Frustration in love is always disastrous. It disturbs a dejected lover mentally and creates vacuum in his or her life. These lines are evidence. These lines are the evidence that the persona, the lady in the poem, is sharing her personal frustration in marital and extramarital relationship that have disastrous impact on her life. She loses all her balance of mind and undergoes intense emotional and intellectual sufferings. As a result, finding no way out, she opts for a life of isolation, a life of separation, and loses all interests in her life. These lines are evident that the poem is an autobiographical poem, and the poem has a direct link with the life of the Kamla Das herself. The last part of the poem. Her husband shut her in every morning, locked her in a room of books with a streak of sunshine lying near the door, like a yellow cat to keep her company. But soon winter came, and one day, while locking her in, he noticed that the cat of sunshine was only a line, a half thin line, and in the evening, when he returned to take her out, she was a cold and half dead woman, now of no use at all to men. In these lines, the life of the female persona is all expressed to be destabilized due to her frustration and due to her disillusionment in her love relationships. She was shocked to learn that she had no relevance as a woman and having no dignified identity at all. She finally realized that all her self-styled lovers were cynics and had no love for her. In these lines, the poetess talks about the final outcome of her love affairs. She says, her husband locked her up in the morning in a room full of books. And she noticed in that room of books a streak of sunshine which penetrated into the room and it lay there near the room. It looked like a yellow cat meant to be her constant company, but soon the winter season set in. One day, while her husband was locking her in the room, he visualized the streak of light seemed only like a cat, reduced to a very hair thin line. And by the time the husband returned home in the evening to take his wife out of that confinement, what he discovered? He discovered that his wife was, the woman was cold and on the verge of death almost. The woman had lost all her youthful appearance, lost all her freshness, lost all her fascination, all her beauty. And overall, she had left with no interest in her life. Moreover, she had lost the very urge to participate in the sexual act due to the non stop suffering and humiliations which she had undergone at the hands of her husband, her cynical husband, and at the hands of other men. And conclusively, she had become useless as an object of sexual exploitation to any man. Life of isolation and life of humiliation always ends in premature destruction, and death. The poetess felt suffocated in the life of confinement and lost her balance of mind. It compelled her to snap all her ties with the external world. She was totally dehumanized and lost her relevance as a woman unfit for sexual purposes. All types of lustful relationships, marital or extramarital, always share a common tragic fate. So here ends the end of the discussion of the text of the poem The Sunshine Cat by Kamla Das. Thank you.